Okay, let's talk about something that so many of us deal with. If your monthly cycle feels like a total guessing game, irregular periods, really heavy bleeding, or just awful pain, you've probably seen the headlines about these new weight loss drugs and thought, wait a minute, could that actually help me? Well, today we are going to dive right into that surprising connection.
I mean, it's a pretty wild question, isn't it? Could a weight loss drug actually fix your period? But believe it or not, it's a question that researchers are finally starting to take seriously. So we're going to look at the actual evidence and see if these super popular GLP-1 medications could be the game changer for menstrual health that some people are hoping for. Let's get into it.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by talking about the period problem. Then we'll get into what these GLP-1 drugs actually are. After that, we'll look at some really promising research for PCOS, cover the super important caveats, and then wrap it all up with what it all means for you.
First up, the period problem. Before we even touch on any medications, let's just take a second to acknowledge that for millions of women, difficult periods are this incredibly frustrating, sometimes debilitating part of life. This isn't some small issue. It's a huge shared experience that is, thankfully, finally getting the attention it deserves.
Okay, so what in the world are these GLP-1s? You have definitely seen them all over the news for weight loss, but it turns out their impact goes way, way deeper, right down to our hormones. And because these drugs have such a powerful effect on things like insulin and our metabolism, they are now getting some serious attention from reproductive health experts. So let's break it down. What exactly is a GLP-1? It stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It's actually a hormone your own body makes to help manage your appetite and keep your blood sugar in check. These new medications, they're called agonists, which is just a fancy way of saying they mimic that natural hormone, but in a much more powerful and long-lasting way. You've probably heard of them by their brand names, right? Semaglutide, that's Ozempic and Wegovy, or liraglutide, which is known as Saxenda. And it's funny, while they were originally designed to help people manage type 2 diabetes, their incredible effect on weight has made them famous for something else entirely. And this brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today, the potential for a real breakthrough for women with PCOS. As of right now, the strongest evidence we have for GLP-1s improving periods is specifically in women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is one of the most common reasons for irregular cycles and infertility. So what's the connection here? Well, for a lot of women with PCOS, the whole puzzle really comes down to something called insulin resistance. When your body isn't using insulin properly, you end up with too much of it floating around. And all that extra insulin can go straight to the ovaries and basically throw your entire menstrual cycle way off track. So, how do these new drugs stack up against what's been used for years? This is data from a 2019 meta-analysis that compared GLP-1s to metformin, which has been the go-to drug for PCOS for decades, and the results are, well, they're pretty fascinating. As you can see, the GLP-1s came out on top in every single category. They were more effective at improving insulin sensitivity, helping with BMI, and here's the big one for us, women taking them saw a much higher rate of improvement in their cycle regularity. But numbers on a chart are one thing. What does this look like for a real person? The source material told this powerful story about a woman with PCOS whose cycles were all over the place, sometimes lasting 50 or even 60 days. But after she started on a GLP-1, her cycles shortened to a much more regular 35 days. For her, this was absolutely life-changing. Just being able to predict her period, what a huge relief. It perfectly shows the real-world impact of these findings. Okay, and this is a really big but. We need to put this in context. The authors of that very same study were super clear about something. The overall quality of the evidence they looked at was rated moderate to low. Now, this doesn't mean the results are wrong, but it's a huge red flag that we absolutely need bigger, better studies before we can say anything for sure. Right, because it's not all sunshine and roses. It's time to talk about the flip side of the coin, the side effects and all the things we still just don't know. Which is exactly why we're calling this section not a miracle cure. That same research also found that GLP-1s came with higher rates of side effects when compared to metformin. The big ones that people reported most often were nausea and headaches. And that's a really important factor for anyone who's even thinking about these medications. So you might be thinking, okay, that's great for PCOS, but what if that's not my issue? What about things like endometriosis or just really heavy bleeding? And that's where the research gets pretty thin. I mean, in theory, there could be benefits. Weight loss can lower estrogen, and some studies hint that GLP-1s reduce inflammation.
But right now, that is all just theory. We just don't have the dedicated research yet.
And listen, there is another major risk we have to talk about. These drugs can crush your appetite so much that it becomes a real struggle to get enough of the key nutrients your body needs. We're talking about things like iron, B vitamins, and omega-3s, all of which are absolutely critical for healthy hormones and energy levels. It's a serious potential downside that has to be managed really carefully.
All right, so we've looked at the good, the bad, and the unknown. Where does that leave us? Let's bring it all home and get to the final word.
So here's the bottom line. The science is, without a doubt, very promising, especially for women who have PCOS combined with insulin resistance. But these drugs are not some magic bullet, not a one-size-fits-all solution for every period problem out there. The benefits seem to be specific, and the research is still very much a work in progress.
And I really cannot stress this enough. If any of this has you curious for yourself, the only responsible next step is to have a serious talk with your healthcare team. They're the only ones who can tell you if it's right for you. And if you do go down that path, working with a dietitian is so important to make sure you're not missing out on those vital nutrients.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to think about. We are watching a powerful new tool enter the scene, but it's bringing a whole new set of questions and challenges with it. So are these drugs the future of how we treat hormonal health? Or is this just the very first chapter in a much longer, much more complicated story? I guess only time and a lot more research will tell. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.